That's an aside show. We start with Newt Gingrich. Joan Walsh is editor-at-large for Salon.com. And David Corn is the Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones and an MSNBC political analyst. It was one of the more ridiculous answers at last week's CNBC Republican debate. Asked about his ties to Freddie Mac, Newt Gingrich said they paid him to offer advice, quote, as an historian. Let's watch.
I offered advice, and my advice as a historian when they walked in and said to me, we are now making loans to people who have no credit history and have no record of paying back anything, but that's what the government wants us to do. As I said to them at the time, this is a bubble. This is insane. This is impossible.
Well, it seems like to pay those Tiffany bills, he's been busy out there for Freddie Mac. Today, Bloomberg reported that Freddie Mac executives dispute Gingrich's assertion that he warned them about the bubble coming. According to Bloomberg, quote, none of the former Freddie Mac officials who spoke on condition of anonymity said Gingrich even raised the issue of the housing bubble or was critical of Freddie Mac's business model. Well, what was Gingrich paid to do? According to two former executives, quote, Gingrich was asked to build bridges to Capitol Hill Republicans and develop an argument on behalf of the company's public-private structure that would resonate with conservatives seeking to dismantle it. He was expected to provide written material that could be circulated among free market conservatives in Congress and outside organizations. Well, the price tag for his services, according to Bloomberg, was between $1.6 and $1.8 million over an 8-year span. Joan, it seems to me that he's doing what all big shots get paid to do. They get paid to sit in law firms or sit in consulting firms or PR firms, whatever they're called at the time, to basically oversee a lobbying campaign. They're the ones that send the little pawns up on Capitol Hill to make the context. They're the ones that know where the action is, know what will sell, and write the talking points. They are, in fact, running the lobbying campaign.
Well, right, and I think he's trying to make a distinction that lobbying really means just going and talking yourself, buttonholing a legislator, going and trading on your connections with individual congresspeople. But that's really not the whole story. And in fact, what he did was trade on his relationships and trade on his status as a great free market person, which he's not, to create these talking points and to create this campaign to say hands off Freddie. And I think it's a ridiculous distinction to say that's not lobbying. Today, I believe he told a reporter it was strategic advice. So
right,
strategic advice from a historian. Okay, thanks, Newt. What's next?
Well, he's got to be Houdini to get out of this one. He may be Houdini. Here, David, let's take a look. Here's Congressman Barney Frank, one of my favorites. He appeared on Martin Bashir's show this afternoon and said Gingrich was a lobbyist for Freddie Mac. He said worse. Let's listen to Barney Frank.
Two L words apply to Newt, lobbyist and liar. Mr. Gingrich was reprimanded by the House for lying. He has a history of doing that. And this is nonsense that he was being paid $1.6 million and maybe more to talk about history, to talk about the transcontinental railroads. He was clearly there as a lobbyist. And again, he kind of slipped and acknowledged that when he said to justify that large amount of money, after all, I'd been Speaker of the House. You don't enhance your academic credentials by having been Speaker. What you enhance is your value as a lobbyist.
I was just thinking, if you work for Freddie Mac, you must be having a hard time. Who should we hire? Oh, should we hire Michael Beschloss? Should we hire David McCullough? Oh, why don't we get Newt Gingrich to be our House historian on housing? I never heard of a housing historian. Clearly, he's the lobbyist in chief. Let me ask you this. Here's a guy, and this is where it's really evil. Well, I don't want to overstate that till we get fully to the bottom of this, but I think it's like that. Here's a guy who's made a lot of points the last couple of months, blasting the Democrats, Dodd and Frank, saying they both ought to be in prison, basically. In fact, he said that, for basically coddling Freddie Mac. Now it turns out he's their chief lobbyist, chief coddler. How can you be that dishonest?
Hey, Chris, you've been around the block a few times. This is 100% Newt Gingrich. This is his pattern. You come up with slippery denials about your own behavior while you throw bombs at the other side, even for doing what you yourself have done. Just go back to the Clinton impeachment crusade. I mean, it's one of the biggest dodges in town to say I'm not a lobbyist.
You mean carrying on an affair with somebody who works on the House staff below you at the same time you're going after a president for doing something like that in the White House?
Yeah, that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what, he's a serial fibber, and you saw that when he said, I was a historian. That is patently absurd. The fact that we even have to parse it or analyze that remark for more than a nanosecond, shows that our political culture is a little bit askew. He should be laughed out of town, as he should have been laughed out of town many times in the past few decades. For
let's catch some of his history. We can all be historians on Newt today. We do remember this. Here in 2008, he's on the O'Reilly Factor talking about the housing meltdown. Let's listen to what he said then. By the way, this is the classic example. He's indicting the Democrats for doing what it turns out he was doing himself, looking out for Freddie Mac's interests. Here he is.
And what you have today is that the rich in Wall Street and the powerful at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had so many politicians beholden to them that, in fact, nobody was going to check them. And so they got away with things that were absolute baloney, and it's a tragedy.
He's not a human being. He's a gaseous state, isn't he? I mean, Joan, this is like a gaseous state around the world. I mean, this is Newtism. This is how can you accuse the Democrats of the very thing you were paid a couple $1 million to do, which is look out for Freddie Mac?
Literally, listening to that, I mean, you know, there's also the clip, I think it was an October 11 debate, where he actually said that who should go to jail? Well, Barney Frank should go to jail because of, and Democrats and their relationship with Freddie Mac. That he can say that knowing that he's taken money, almost $2 million from Freddie Mac. I mean, honestly, David, I agree with you. We should have seen this coming. But I find this shocking, and I didn't think I was capable.
Why should he? By the way,
I think it's pathological. I mean, I know that's a big word, and I'm not trying to hype it here, but this is, you know, you can go through 30 years of his statements, and actually we did that at Mother Jones a couple weeks ago. I should put that story back up again on the homepage. But and you can find examples of this again and again and again. It's not a slip-up. This is an M.O., his modus operandi for Newt Gingrich. And I mean, listen, I called someone at Freddie Mac when his storyline first came out, and the guy just started laughing at me. He goes, "Why do you guys even believe that or talk about it for a moment?" He was paid the same way we paid all politicians, to be in our pocket and to make us look good. It's that simple.
I think you were very excellent there in ripping the scab off the reprimand he got as head of one branch of government, as Speaker of the House. And now he pretends to be a candidate. And I think he does pretend to be a candidate for a head of another branch, the executive branch. How can you go from being kicked off of one branch and grabbing onto the other? I don't get it. But I want to remind everybody about something worse than all his flip-flops. We may get to that in a segment. But let me get to something that's classic Newt. Remember, Joan, when he blamed the Democrats for Susan Smith's killing of her kids? The return to that day of yesterday. What does that tell you about a politician? He's not a normal politician who does that stuff.
No, it was abominable. It was unbelievable. This woman, obviously disturbed. First she lied and said a black man carjacked her and killed her kids. Then it was found that she did it herself. And Newt said, he literally said, it was on the eve of the '94 midterms, that the only way to stop behavior like this was to vote Republican. He said that the Democrats had created this culture of corruption and law breaking and families disintegrating. And reporters came back to him and said, "Is that what you're saying? Are you really saying Republicans can stop that?" He said, "Absolutely." Right. So this is, again, this kind of projection.
Okay, now with that leitmotif, with that background, I want you to watch this little sod here, a little bit of tape here on his flip-flops. Let's watch Newt, because you got to look at these flip-flops, not his flip-flops, but his really dishonesty. Here he is.
I believe all of us, and this is going to be a big debate, I believe all of us have a responsibility to help pay for health care. I think the idea that
you agree with Mitt Romney on this point.
Well, I agree that all of us have a responsibility to help pay for health care. And I think that there are ways to do it that make most libertarians relatively happy. I've said consistently we ought to have some requirement that you either have health insurance or you post a bond or in some way you indicate you're going to be held accountable.
But that is the individual mandate, is it not?
It's a variation on it.
I am completely opposed to the Obamacare mandate on individuals and against any effort to impose a federal mandate on anyone because it is fundamentally wrong and I believe unconstitutional.
What would you do about Libya?
Exercise a no-fly zone this evening. I mean, the idea that we're confused about a man who has been an anti-American dictator since 1969 just tells you how inept this administration is. They were very quick to jump on Mubarak, who was their ally for 30 years, and they're confused about getting rid of Gaddafi. This is a moment to get rid of him. Do it. I would not have intervened. I think there were a lot of other ways to affect Gaddafi. I think there are a lot of allies in the region that we could have worked with. I would not have used American and European forces. I don't think right-wing social engineering is any more desirable than left-wing social engineering. I don't think imposing radical change from the right or the left is a very good way for a free society to operate. I made a mistake, and I called Paul Ryan today, who's a very close personal friend, and I said that. The fact is that I have supported what Ryan's tried to do on the budget. Any ad which quotes what I said on Sunday is a falsehood. And because I have said publicly, those words were inaccurate and unfortunate.
David, what we're watching here is not someone who changes his mind, but we're watching a whirling dervish of a dishonesty. He spins and spins and spins, depending on the circumstance and the moment, and grabs what he thinks is the higher ground in that moment. And he doesn't tell the truth about what he thinks because it's the same person claiming to think two different things in the same moment. How can you believe a word this guy says as he runs for president?
Chris, I think, I've been in town almost as long as you have. If you had to name the most situational politician we've ever covered, Newt would certainly be at the top of that list. He's not you're right, he's not a flip-flopper. He is a gyrator. Following him gets you dizzy. The word spin, in the dictionary, he should be next to it because he never, ever stops. And he likes to position himself or depict himself as a grand, big thinker of noble, grand, big thoughts. But if you actually, compare one to the next over the years, you see there's no consistency. And inside, it's like hollowness. It's really whatever is going to give him that edge at the moment, the advantage, that's what he goes for. And it doesn't matter what he said 10 seconds earlier.
Joan, last thought.
Well, I think this will really sink him because he and Republicans have succeeded in demonizing Freddie Mac and making Freddie Mac into an agent of socialism. So the idea that he took almost $2 million from Freddie Mac, he's a liar, he's a hypocrite, and I think he's done with the Tea Party.
Yeah, join the crowd that's attacking Freddie Mac, then get paid to defend him. What a brilliant Washington game.
Yeah.
And now he's been caught. This is the price of front runnership. Newt.
Exactly.
Thank you, Joan Walsh. I had to have you two guys here. I think it's so great. You two guys are the best at understanding Washington. Thank you, David Corn. Coming